I also want to thank both the chair of Oversight and the chair of Judiciary for their hard work on this bill. It's so important. And we know that our founders provided us with a government whose power is vested in 3 separate but equal branches. Each acts as a check to the others to ensure our rights guaranteed under the Constitution. And the system of checks and balances is at the very foundation of our democracy. James Madison wrote, quote, "Such devices should be necessary to control the abuse of government," end quote. Unfortunately, the prior administration eroded this country's well-established constitutional order when it shattered democratic norms, abused executive powers, and disregarded Congress's critical oversight role. As members of Congress, it's our duty to check executive branch overreach by holding presidents and their administrations accountable. That's why I'm a proud co-sponsor of the Protect Our Democracy Act. This bill will help ensure that our government remains of, by, and for the people. The American people want these critical guardrails to prevent any president, regardless of party, from abusing the public's trust. The 2 amendments I put forward today will further this mission to protect our democracy from subversion. My first amendment protects poll workers and election officials who work tirelessly to ensure the free and fair administration of elections. In the wake of the 2020 elections, poll workers and their families have been subjected to unprecedented levels of harassment, violent threats, and intimidation, all spurred by the baseless conspiracies of Stop the Steal. As a result, in my home state, in North Carolina, and countless others, people have suffered critical shortages of poll workers. Ahead of the 2020 election, over 1/4 of counties in North Carolina had understaffed polling sites. This is unacceptable. The lack of poll workers threatens the right at the very core of our democracy, the right to vote. It creates a litany of barriers to the ballot box, from longer lines to fewer polling sites, and disproportionately costs vulnerable North Carolinians and people of color, cuts them out of our political process. My amendment would establish a task force within the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute threats to election officials in collaboration with state and local governments. Threats to local election officials are threats to our democracy and must be stopped. The Second Amendment ensures transparency by prohibiting overreaching non-disclosure agreements that have no legitimate purpose and obstruct the public's interest in executive branch operations. In the previous White House, staffers were required to sign NDAs that far exceeded the bounds of lawful public employee speech restrictions. These NDAs infringed on the First Amendment rights of both government employees and the press that reports on matters of public interest. My amendment preserves the executive branch's ability to enforce secrecy requirements when needed to protect national security interests, and will not change current policies governing classified or controlled information. For the Americans to have faith in the White House and that it is working in the public interest, not just the president's interest, executive office staff cannot be routinely silenced by overreaching NDAs. I urge my colleague to support our founders' vision, our constitutional rights, and our democracy by advancing this bill and my amendments. Thank you, and I yield back.